Every Sunday, we do something called a community moment. It's where we have someone from our community come up and share something about themselves, an idea, a thought, their journey, whatever it may be. And this week, we are really fortunate to have someone who's actually not a part of Kansas City, but comes to Kansas City quite a bit, is heavily involved with Camp Quest, Kansas City, and his name is Brad Ericson. And he happens to be the professor of biology at the University of Nebraska and has been there for 26 years. He teaches molecular biology, immunology, and virology. Did I say that right? Okay, passed my test. His area of research is insect innate immunity. His hobbies include CrossFit, chess, reading nonfiction, and coaching football. I asked for 3 words for him to describe himself. He said, scientist, atheist, and intense. I asked if he had a warning label. What would it be? He said, caution. Your views will be subjected to intense scrutiny and potential sarcasm. Let's give a really great warm welcome to Brad Ericson.
Well, thanks so very much, Helen, for that introduction. And it's truly a pleasure to be here at Kansas City Oasis. I was introduced to this group by Sarah Hargreaves, and originally met Sarah at Camp Quest, Minnesota, actually, and then I told her that I'd be more than happy to help her get one started here in Kansas City. Well, I just want you to know that it's not my habit to share personal emails with a crowd of strangers, so in that way I'm quite different from Hillary Clinton. Oh, sorry. But anyway, I chose this because I think a number of you have probably experienced this same thing, and that's unfortunate, and what that thing is what I'm going to explain here. The following is a personal exchange between a former Christian friend and myself. The initial impetus of the conversation was me asking her the following question. If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be? Her response and my response are broken down into individual points from the actual emails. And her final response, and this is what I was getting at in my introduction, was to unfriend me. Cindy, as to your final question, I kept pondering it since you wrote, but ultimately I arrived at the same answer every time. The answer will likely surprise you, but that may be because I became a Christian in grad school and over the years have come to view some things differently. Cindy and I knew each other as undergraduates at Kearney State College, so that's what KSC means here. So what did you consider yourself to be when you were at KSC, and what changed when you went to graduate school? Unfortunately, I'm not going to know the answers to any of these questions that I asked. Of course, there are many things I would like to have different about the world. I would want everyone to be disease-free, have access to clean water, to settle arguments reasonably, and whether personal or national. There's a long list. However, I would not change anything. And to me, that revealed a lot. And if I have time, I'll describe what I think that revealed to me. Cindy, I agree that the above things are very noble pursuits. I personally am involved in trying to eliminate as much disease from the world as I can. Access to clean water or water period is going to produce a lot of worldwide conflict, and our military is preparing for this as we speak. What would you point to as the single greatest reason why arguments cannot be settled reasonably in the world? Without making this a theological treatise, God's mind is far greater than mine and in many ways inscrutable. But I have come to trust that things are the way they are for my good. Has anyone ever read the book Candide, Voltaire's Candide? Okay, so some of you have. Okay. Well, I knew Cindy had as well. So I asked, do you remember reading Voltaire's book Candide? You may recall that Candide was convinced that everything that happened to him was for the best. But we clearly knew that was not the case as we read the story. We judge things as good, as bad or good, typically based on how much these events minimize suffering or maximize happiness. As I sit here typing, the likelihood that a young girl will somewhere in the world be kidnapped, subjected to torture, rape, and probably murder is quite high. If it isn't happening right now, it will within a day or so, just based on the probability of having 7 billion people in the world. Is this type of event for your benefit? I could give many other such potential examples. If no one had disease, how would I appreciate good health? Cindy, I would suggest that this is a false dichotomy. Every year, 9 million children will die before they reach the age of 5. That's approximately 24,000 a day, about 1,000 per hour, or in the length of time it's taken me to type this sentence, about 7 children will have died. Let's make it even more so you really need these 9 million examples to appreciate your health. Let's make it even more specific. Should we bring back smallpox so that we can better appreciate clear, unscarred skin as opposed to the survivors of smallpox who are scarred for life? Should we bring back polio to the Western Hemisphere so that we can more fully appreciate the ability to walk? If everyone had adequate resources and equity, what would prompt me to grow in empathy, compassion, and good works? As I have already mentioned, inequity of the world's resources is one of the major reasons we have so much conflict and so much suffering in the world today. Again, I suggest you have presented yourself with a false dichotomy. Do you really need periodic famines to help yourself grow in empathy and compassion? Do you need the contrast between the royal Saudi family and the plight of the rest of that country's population, in particular its female population, to drive your desire to do good works? But when things happen, and I take them a day at a time, doing the best I can with what I have, I find that when I'm inadequate, God provides in unexpected ways. On what evidence are you concluding that it is God that is providing for you? Confirmation bias is an extremely powerful emotion, and one that I and other scientists must constantly guard against. When we expect event X to occur and then it does, we must very carefully evaluate this, because you can oftentimes forget that events Y and Z also occurred, or that it took you a number of tries to get event X and other results were obtained first. I'm who I am today because of all the horrible things and all the fabulous things that have happened that were not in my plan and were out of my control. So much we can't control, but we always can control our response. We choose to get better or bitter. And I had to leave some things out, so if things seem a little disjointed, I've deleted a few parts of this email. Again, we are in much agreement here. Our life experiences clearly shape who we are. And I fully agree that it's not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back up that counts. At the same time, either you learn from what has happened to you or you don't. George Santayana, those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Much of what is wrong with the world is of human inaction, and could probably be remedied by humans. Again, we are in line here. In the words of President Kennedy, our problems are man-made, and therefore they can be solved by man. And man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond man. Would you not agree, Cindy, that man must decide whether he wants to provide a full life for humanity or destroy himself with his own problems? I see various events as they happen, and they distress me a great deal, and so I speak out as I do. Much of the strife that occurs in the world would be mitigated if recourse to fairy tales were not driving many of the disagreements. Because there is no way to show whose view is objectively correct, this often leads to violence. Kill the infidel is an all too often used mantra. The Christian view is that the earth is a gift to us, and it is our responsibility to make her our servant. As I point out above, are we going to be wise enough to not destroy the house we have? I must admit, I don't like your use of the term servant, and if I am misinterpreting your meaning here, please forgive me, but this is the mindset of those who would deny climate change, or even worse, are some of the primary perpetrators of it. Cindy is a mother of two who probably looks forward to the day when grandchildren run through her house. Would you have them believe that the world is their servant to use for any purpose they desire? Or would you teach them that they are stewards of the world? Indeed, if you carefully study most early scientists, many were Christians and attempting to understand everything about creation to better know God and to serve people. I certainly do not disagree with that as a matter of historical fact. But you have ignored the contemporary situation. As things stand today, the majority of scientists reject the worldview you depict. 93% of the members of the National Academy of Sciences, the creme de la creme of our scientists, are atheists. And yet they are able to better serve the people and show just as much compassion and drive as did their predecessors. And lest we forget, religious beliefs have all too often been an impediment, not a synergism, for scientific progress. We need only look as long ago as when Bush was president to remember the ban put on stem cell research due solely to the reasoning that souls could be found in petri dishes. So my job is to do good where I can, be responsible, encourage and love others, and generally help them become the best they can be. I have absolutely no doubt you indeed do this, Cindy. I can literally feel the warmth, passion, and gentleness in your words. But what is your true motivation for doing it? Is it because of a genuine concern for your fellow man, regardless of whether your religious doctrine is true or not? Or is it motivated, at least in part, by a fear of punishment or the earning of reward? I would suggest that the secularist who accepts as his or her responsibility the same ideals is proceeding on a higher moral path. Bottom line, I'm so grateful to be living in this time in history and in the world just as it is. Surprised? The Chinese have a proverb. May you live in interesting times. I would agree that there is no other time in history that I would rather be living, and that the time you spend on this earth, which is the only life we can be certain of, is to be treasured, valued, and utilized to the fullest. However, as I think I have made clear, I would change the world. And I think you would agree that through our actions, we are all changing the world in some small way every day. My goal, through what I have done as a scientist or as an atheist activist, is simple to state, but hard to achieve. And that is to minimize human suffering and maximize human happiness. The one best way I can change the world toward that end is to do how the immune system works and apply that toward the conquering of disease. Cindy, I will remain your friend for as long as you want me to be, regardless of where this conversation takes us. As I have tried to make clear, your friendship is important to me, and I hope mine is important to you. Our worldviews are quite different, and that's okay. This much I do know. We need more people like you in the world if it is going to be changed. You gave me a couple of things to think about in your answer, and I was truly touched by some of the things you said. I hope I have done the same for you with this response. After all, that is what I have spent the majority of my life doing, making people think. Best, Brandon. Thank you.